And we are live. Welcome to the Rome Show. How you doing, bro?
How's it going?
Going good.
Doing
I
good.
appreciate you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be on here.
Definitely. So I came across you from Paul PG Sports,
Yeah.
and it's one of my media friends. Good guy, and I was interested in your story, and I seen that you wrote a book and stuff like that. So for the people on my platform that don't know, can you tell them about what you do a little bit?
I think most people don't know who I am, so I do the intro. Happy to get the name out there. Get the I love Paul. Paul was a big influence. But yeah, uh, how depends on how deep you want me to go. So yeah, I wrote a book on the Hartford Whalers. Came out in 2021. We're in the process of turning it into a documentary film that will be unveiled at some point later this year, I think. And so yeah, my background is I've been writing about sports for about the past man too many years, almost 20 years, and 19 I'd say it's been. Started college at Sacred Heart University. Got to throw them a plug because I wouldn't have been anywhere without them. And just trying to plug away. It's a hard road, media, sports media. Everybody wants to do it, but it's a tricky field to get in. And I mean, it's funny because it's tricky, but it's also never been easier in some ways. As platforms, do it yourself platforms and build, social media, find ways to create audiences. So it's been a grind, frankly. I've had bylines in the New York Times and USA Today, and worked for NHL.com for 5.5 years. Like you said, published the book on the Whalers that came out in 2021. Since 2021, I've been writing for a sports betting website called The Game Day. Been leading their hockey coverage, but also chipping in football, basketball, baseball, mostly football and basketball, and covering the NBA a bit for the AP. So it's been a ride. Hasn't been a straight road by any means. Hasn't been the road I expected, but it's been it's certainly been eventful and still going. I can't get out of this thing. So it's cool to be still following something I love doing.
Right. You got a lot of great stuff going on. You're from Connecticut, correct?
I'm from New Jersey, but I went to
New
college in
Jersey.
Connecticut. Spent 10 years in Connecticut after college. Well, in
Okay.
college and after college.
Okay. Super fire. And you said you were in the New York Times.
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote for them for about 3 years. Covered the NHL mostly. Did a little bit of other stuff, but yeah, mostly the NHL as a correspondent. It was one of those things that, uh, you know, through the book, built some contacts, networked, and when I finally got to the end of my rope, I spent 5 years out of college. I got out of college right around the recession time, the Great Recession, and media jobs were drying up. And it's funny, I interviewed for this job as a sports editor for a community paper right after I got out of college, and my boss at the time said, "You'll be here 1 year, and you go on to something bigger and better." And I spent 5.5 years there, because the recession and because there was all sorts, there was no jobs and there was no real path. So it was one of those things that the book sort of I had an idea to write a book about the Whalers that they hadn't been done before, and so I sort of pushed that along. I had a completely like you said, most people would think I was from Connecticut to put together the book on the Whalers, but I was more just this hockey fan who was aware of the history of the team and them moving to Carolina, who was sort of in the right place at the right time. Again, I was going to college in Connecticut, and my career was at the end of its rope. It was going nowhere, frankly, and I needed a way to boost it a bit. So I started working on the book, essentially to build contacts and network, and obviously build my profile. And then I found the story was really good, and honestly, the the book did all the things I was hoping it would. It built my network, and again, I got to parlay some of that, some of the connections into other roles, like at the New York Times and at the NHL, and so and then, like I said, it was one of those things that it took me 10 years to write the book and get it published, and it was a grind. But I wanted, and I knew I needed to do it the right way. But I started with a blank slate, a blank canvas, and a lot of people tell me that was the best way to go about it because I didn't have any biases. I just sort of went in and was like, okay, I have to learn all this stuff and then present what I learned in the book in the best way possible. And it took that long because it took that long. I mean, it was supposed to be 8 years, but then the pandemic slowed some things and pushed some things back, and then even when it came out, it was unavailable for a while. So it's been a hard road, even with the book in some cases. But it was rewarding. Again, it got me to New York Times, got me to National Bleacher Report, National AP, USA Today, and got me a higher profile. And I really love the story. The history of the Whalers is fascinating, and now it's cool to be doing a film. These are things that I never would have imagined, could have imagined, frankly, because writing a book is a heavy lift. And then one of my friends was just like, "Hey, do you want to make it into a film?" And I was like, I guess, sure, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And now it's we're making great progress and making great strides, and it's hard to believe in some cases, and in other cases it's like, well, yeah, we're right exactly where we're supposed to be.
Right. And well, all those big things going on, before they happen, and now that they did happen, how does it feel? The book, the film.
It's weird because we always think, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I always think that when I get to this place, I'll feel this way. And when I get to this place, I'll get to this. And when I get to this milestone, I'll do this and this and this and this. And it's not. It's super rewarding to be in this position, to be able, to be working on a film, to be, we were in Florida last week, and we were in North Carolina before that, doing source interviews, and we were at Whalers Night in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then we were in again Florida, recorded a lot of interviews last week, and we're in California in November, and it's super fun, and it's super rewarding. But I say this all the time, like, I don't feel like I made it, if that makes any sense. It's one of those things where, again, I don't have this opinion of myself that, okay, I'm in a position where I'm comfortable, where I would love to be, where everything is good. And because of that, like I said, and not that the fame is everything, but like most people don't know who I am still. Most people wouldn't think of me in any sort of way to produce. It's sort of like I've done a bunch of doors to get on the platform. Like, I wouldn't be the first person anyone would have picked to write a book on the Whalers. Wouldn't be the first person anyone would have picked to write for the New York Times or for the various other websites. I've always, it's just been sort of knocking on doors and knocking down doors and trying to do the best you can. And I think in some ways it's hard because, again, you have to hustle. You have to kind of constantly grind and constantly push and struggle for recognition and struggle for new opportunities. And because I never got the beat writing position. I never got the columnist position. I never got, again, the writing industry sort of changed very drastically since I got out of college. So, it's not something that, I'm not certainly front of mind for a lot of people, but I think in some cases it's also led me to be really open and really willing to sort of chase things. Again, I wouldn't, if I was in a position where I was comfortable, I would have said no to a film. I would have said, okay, I don't have time for that. I don't have, but I live for, I love the documentary films. I love the 30 for 30s. I love the HBO ones, and they're really entertaining and they're really fascinating, and I really learn a lot, more so than biopics, I find. And it's, so to be able to do that, be able to be hungry enough and open enough to do that is a real blessing. And I think now it's everybody asks me what's next, and I hate that question because it's like inspiration needs to strike. But at the same
Right.
time, I'm constantly thinking, like, what's next? And I'm not in a position where it's like, okay, things are good, things are calm. I don't need to focus on what's next. I mean, it's like, again, it's a double-edged sword, because I would love to be in that spot where it's like, okay, we're good, we're just gonna coast here a little bit. But then at some point it's like, well, what's next? We got to keep going, we got to keep running here. And so it's not easy, but it's fun, and it's, every day is a new adventure, and we'll see where it goes.
Right. And knowing that you didn't get like that number one spot or that big pick, how did you keep going on a day-to-day basis?
I think it's just this. So I always refer to sports and sports media as a vocation. It's like a calling. It's like some people were called, like, the people are called to the priesthood, and I was called to get in sports media. Is sort of, I've been watching. I still watch games every night, and much to the chagrin of my family, my wife and my family. They don't, my son loves it, but I've been chasing a career in sports media since I realized I couldn't play professionally, and so it's one of those things that it was weird because during the recession, again, while I was spending 5 years at a entry level job, it was a position where I saw people get out. I saw people go back, go to grad school, go to law school, go to different sort of career paths because they realized the media stuff wasn't going to be enough for them. And I thought they were crazy because, again, this is something that I always wanted to do. This is something that I knew from day one that I was building towards something bigger and better and greater. And I think the beauty of that is that that's never died for me. That's always been the case, and that's always, it's still the case. So I think it's not, again, and it's not fame I'm chasing. It's not, it's just basically what I want to do is learn stuff. As nerdy as it sounds to say, I love learning, but I like learning things, and I like, understanding stories, and I like presenting them to people is really what it comes down to. And it's sports is like the best medium for that, because we have there's all these stories that come out on a day-to-day basis where it's like, what, like, how did that happen? Like, how is that possible? Like,
Right.
I mean, it's more so than even, movies or music or any, it's sort of like real perseverance and like stranger than fiction type stories. Like, so I think there's, again, and there's no shortage of them. Like, and I not to make this, an underdog story, but like Brock Purdy is the Mr. Irrelevant to the Super Bowl quarterback. Like that's exhibit A. And then there's a million of those stories where, Kurt Warner back in the day. So I think you learn things and you just, it sort of boggles the mind. Like, how is this possible? And then, you realize sports is loaded with those, and this whole idea of competition, I think it's innate in all of us. We want to persevere, we want to win, and our teams are a sort of the person, the symbol of that, right? Like, my team won over your team. Doesn't matter what's going on in my everyday life, but I feel good because my team won, and it puts all, or my team lost, and it's just it's the perfect personification of how I feel. I'm a loser. I am not good enough. I don't measure up. I lost. So, it's also weird to think about because it's in the grand scheme of things, it's also meaningless, right? Like, the games are so meaningless. Like, even the regular season games we're all watching, like you're watching, getting ready for March Madness or the NCAA tournament, and like one team's going to win out of 68. And all these college basketball games, these conference tournament games, they're all going to be meaningless. They're just like, oh, well, remember that? No one's going to remember that. They're going to remember how your season ends. And yet we devote so much time to it. It's kind of bizarre, but it's harmless and it's fun, and it's how I choose to spend my time. And it's just how it is, I guess.
Right. Super cool story, bro. You got a lot of great stuff going on.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Right for now. We'll see how it goes.
And everything that you're doing, like, being an author, writing, filming, are you doing all this on your own, or you have like a partner or a manager pitch you
It's
ideas?
Funny. Yeah, it's funny because I always say that the book was like the ultimate flex in what I could do. Because like I got all the interviews and I arranged them all and I put them together and I asked all the questions and I wrote all the words, and the film has been this collaborative effort, and it's something that has been such a relief. I have my partner Tal Pinchesky, who he's working on a bunch of other stuff. He's doing some content, some storytelling for the NHL. He approached me about doing the film, and again, it was one of those things that I just could not like. I could not like it. I was in another crossroads of my career because I was sort of, it was in the pandemic, and there was, again, the pandemic had a huge effect on media roles, and obviously the economy. When the economy is good, media stuff is better, and when it's bad, it's worse. So my career was going sort of nowhere. I was sort of flailing. I was at the NHL in a role that I wasn't necessarily suited for, and there wasn't a lot of creative freedom, and it was frustrating. So he came to me, Tal Pinchevsky came to me, and he said, do you want to make this a film? You want to do your book and make it a film? And I was like, sure, whatever. And it was one of those, it was as simple as that, just being sure. And then it was sort of slow. It's been slow going, it's been a process, for say the least, because it's, these things are slow. You got to get money, you got to get partners, you got to get equipment, you got to get you got to get people to buy into what you're trying to sell them. And I think having the book came out a year after we technically started developing the film. And I think having the book was sort of this tangible element, like, okay, this is the story we can tell. And then we got some buy-in from some people. We had a good partnership from Sacred Heart University, which has been, they've been a great partner through this process. And we have some crew of some students, some graduate students who have been super professional and super talented and really, really, really hardworking to help craft this. So like, it's one of those things where I know the story. I mean, if I could do it myself, like in some ways it would be easier to do it myself, because I could just set up the camera, and I could set up, the lighting, and I just wouldn't need anybody else, and I could just do it all on my own time. And I just, but I would go crazy. I would lose, burn out, and I would, and I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have enough to persevere. And so thankfully I've had a group of people who are, sort of guided me through the ebbs and flows when you get rejected, when we had a meeting. We have Bill Rasmussen as one of our partners. He's the founder of ESPN. He's one of the sources we had as an interview in Florida last week. So we met him. He's 91 years old. He's just this great, awesome, just old guy who's just full of stories and full of, positivity. And it was great to talk to him. But so we met with him a few years ago, and he got us a meeting with 30 for 30 to try and pitch this to them as a 30 for 30 film. And so, we presented our pitch, and they were super excited about meeting Bill, and we went to the end with them, and they passed on it. And so it was devastating, because it was just, I thought, okay, this is it. This is, this is this is the end. This is the road. The books led to the 30 for 30, and it's going to be the moment my career makes it, and we present this film, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to get everything. And it didn't happen, and it just was upsetting and devastating. And Tal, again, as he's been all along, okay, it's disappointing that they passed on this, but it's not the end. We're going to keep going, and we're going to keep striving and persevering. And I think you sort of, it's let having another person there to bounce these disappointments off of professionally, when I have a family, and I have a spouse, and I have, I can bounce these disappointments off them, but they don't quite get it the same way that having a partner who's as invested in you as you are in the project do. And they're just, okay, it was and you look back, and I look back at the meeting with ESPN, it was awesome. It was one of those career highlight, but and the fact they passed is disappointing, but we're still going. And I think that was the thing, because there were so many moments where I could have like, my gut would have said, okay, it's time to pack up the tent and fold this and quit this idea, because I don't know what I'm doing, and they don't know what they're, and we're not going anywhere, and it doesn't seem to be like this is progressing. And it was just time to sit still and wait for it to all play out. So I think having a group of people who are sort of keep you on an even keel when I'm incapable sometimes of remaining on that balance, has helped me become more balanced. So it's been awesome having a group of people to close, because I tend to keep my circles close. I don't think of myself as this broad, like, group, people person necessarily. It's something that's sort of coming out in me through this process, is that I can be a little more open and honest, and don't have to be so untrusting of others. So it's definitely not natural for me to be, this gregarious, outgoing. And yet when I get going, I could just get going. And so it's, but again, having this group of people who are invested in it with you, where it's not just me running the show, having to do everything, has been such a relief, because I just be like, okay, can you do this? And they say, yeah, I can do this. And it's like, okay, so I don't have to do it all like I did with the book, or I don't have to arrange all the interviews, or I don't have to, put together all the logistics of everything. I could hand this off, or I could do some of it, And so I think for me, it's usually all or nothing. So it's been really nice having a group of people who I trust, who are capable, who are along for the ride with me there.
Right, definitely super fire story, man. I really appreciate you for coming on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate you for having me.
Definitely. Take care.
You too, bud.